Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really going back right to the beginning of Western philosophy, you could say.
Are indeed.
We're looking at Anaximander of Miletus, a fascinating figure, and specifically his concept of the Apeiron. It's
Whoa,
it's often misunderstood, isn't it?
deeply misunderstood.
Yeah.
Often just sort of brushed off as, some kind of primitive idea about basic matter, material substrate.
Right.
But that's really not the whole picture. Our mission today really is to show it for what it likely was, a incredibly sophisticated idea, singular, dynamic, self-regulating even.
And it ties into this word archa.
Exactly. Anaximander was the first to really use arche philosophically, and the Apeiron for him kind of embodies both meanings of arche at once. It's the origin, the genesis, where things come from,
Okay.
and it's the immanent law, the dike, that governs how they exist and change. Origin and rule, all in one.
And, getting a handle on this isn't just for academics. It actually gives you a direct line into how people first started asking these huge questions about reality and order.
Absolutely, and those questions, those ways of thinking, they still resonate today, surprisingly so.
Okay, so if it's that profound, why the misunderstanding? You mentioned it gets brushed off. How did that happen?
Well, a lot of it comes down to who told the story later. We
Well.
mostly get Anaximander through this.
Hmm?
Let's call it an anachronistic filter. Mainly Aristotle and then commentators like Theophrastus and Simplicius writing much, much later.
Aristotle, right. And he had his own agenda, didn't he? In his metaphysics, his physics.
Yeah.
He was kind of slotting these earlier thinkers into his own system.
Precisely. He framed them, the Ionians like Anaximander, as being primarily concerned with the material cause, like what's the basic stuff everything's made of.
As if they were just leading up to his ideas, his four causes.
Exactly. It was a kind of a teleological history, seeing them as sort of amateurish steps towards his own grand theory. So terms like element, stoition, or substratum, these are really Aristotelian concepts. They got slapped onto pre-Socratic thought retroactively. It basically forced Anaximander's Apeiron into a box it was never meant for, which makes understanding him on his own terms quite tricky.
But when you look at Anaximander compared to his peers, like Thales said water, right? Something tangible.
Yes, concrete, observable water. That was his archer.
Anaximander said,
N-
no.
He explicitly rejected that, and his reasoning was pretty sharp, actually. He argued, look, if the fundamental principle was one specific element like hot fire or cold water, things with definite qualities that oppose each other, then eventually one would just dominate and destroy the others. How could fire generate water without, being put out itself? It doesn't make sense.
Okay, so what was his answer?
The Apeiron. The word itself is key. A meaning without. Paras meaning limit or boundary.
So limitless, boundless.
Boundless, unlimited, yes, but crucially also qualitatively indefinite. It's not fire, not water, not air, not earth. It's some other nature, as the sources say, from which all these definite things arise.
Wow. That really is a leap, isn't it? From the physical stuff you can see and touch to something abstract.
It's huge. It's a shift from physics, seeking the basic element, to metaphysics, seeking the fundamental principle, reached by argument, by logic, not just observation.
It makes you wonder what sparked that kind of thinking back then. And his student, Anaximenes, he went back to air, didn't he? Was that a step backward?
You might think so, but probably not. It seems more like Anaximenes was trying to synthesize, keep the boundless idea from Apeiron, but give it a more concrete mechanism condensation and a rarefaction of air to explain how things change, trying to bridge the abstract and the observable, perhaps.
Interesting. And Aristotle's criticism of the Apeiron. You said it shows he didn't really get it.
Yeah, the irony is thick there. Aristotle dismissed the Apeiron because he thought of it as some impossible intermediate stuff that would have to be made of opposites, which he thought was contradictory.
But wait, Anaximander said it was indefinite precisely because it wasn't one of the opposites.
Exactly. It wasn't a mixture of hot and cold. It was the undifferentiated unity from which hot and cold get separated out.
Yeah.
Aristotle was thinking in terms of composition, like mixing ingredients.
Well, Anaximander was thinking about generation
Yes, precisely. Aristotle was asking, what are existing things made of? His thinking was sort of static, classificatory. Anaximander was asking, how does a world of constant change and interaction arise and stay in balance? His thinking was dynamic, generative, regulatory. Aristotle just imposed his categories onto Anaximander's very different project.
Okay, so if we strip away that Aristotelian filter, what does the Apeiron look like? You said it's active.
Profoundly active, generative, perpetual. It's not just sitting there. Central to Anaximander's whole picture is the idea of eternal motion, idioskinesis. And this motion isn't pushed from outside. It's inherent to the Apeiron. It's nature to be in motion.
And this motion is what gets things started.
It's the engine of cosmogony, yeah. The main mechanism seems to be something called apocrysis, a separating off.
Separating off.
Yeah, like a differentiation, probably through some kind of rotation or vortex motion within the Apeiron. The primary opposites, hot, cold, wet, dry, get separated out from the boundless unity. It's not really a chemical thing, more like articulating potentials that were latent within it.
And this separation creates the basic cosmic structure.
That seems to be the idea. The hot separates off to form, say, a sphere of flame around the outside. The cold and wet remain in the center, eventually forming the Earth, surrounded by mist or air.
Okay, that makes sense as a sort of primal structure.
But here's where it gets really, really interesting. One ancient report says that what was separated off from this eternal motion was a gonomon of hot and cold.
It's a gonomon. What's that?
Gonomon is a biological term in Greek. It means fertile, generative, seed-like, or capable of giving birth, like an embryo or an egg.
Whoa. So he's using a biological analogy for the birth of the cosmos.
It strongly suggests that yes, like the Apeiron is a kind of cosmic womb, and this gonomon is the fertile seed that emerges and then differentiates, develops into the complex world we see, like an embryo developing.
It's a very different picture from just limitless stuff.
It is.
It sounds
Yeah,
alive.
exactly. It's a vitalistic model. And it fits surprisingly well with his other ideas, like his views on the origin of life. He apparently thought the first living creatures arose in moisture.
Right, you mentioned that. And humans from fish-like creatures.
Yes, because human infants need such long nurturing, he reasoned they couldn't have survived initially on land, so they must have developed inside some other creature first. It points towards a unified view where the whole cosmos is like a giant living organism, a zooshon.
So the Apeiron isn't passive matter at all. It's self-organizing, self-differentiating, inherently generative.
Definitely. It's not just the stuff of the world, it's the living process of the world coming into being.
And this process, it doesn't just happen once.
No, and that's another mind-bending part. Anaximander apparently believed the Apeiron is the source of innumerable worlds or heavens or anoi that constantly come into being and then perish.
A multiverse. In the 6th century BCE.
Effectively, yes. This vision really underscores how boundless the Apeiron must be. It has to be this inexhaustible fountain to keep generating world after world cyclically.
So worlds die out. But what happens then? Are they just gone?
No, they seem to resolve back into the Apeiron. They perish, but their substance, maybe, returns to the boundless source, which then provides the raw material for new worlds to form. It's a continuous cosmic cycle, a perpetual rhythm of generation and destruction.
Okay, so it's the ultimate source, constantly creating. But you also said it's a law, governing principle. How does that work? How does it govern these worlds?
Right. It's not just about origins, it's also about ongoing order. And the best clue we have for this is that single precious fragment of his actual writing that survived thanks to Simplicius.
Ah, yes, the fragment. Let's hear it again.
Okay, it goes. Whence things have their origin, their destruction happens as it is ordained. Kata to kreon.
Ordained. Like fated.
Yeah, necessary. Then, for they give justice, dike, and compensation to one another, alleloi, for their injustice, adikia, according to the ordering of time, katatun to krenotaxin.
Wow. That's packed. Justice, injustice, compensation. It sounds almost legal.
It really does. And we need to unpack those terms carefully. Dike, justice, and adikia, injustice. They aren't moral judgments here, not in our sense.
So injustice isn't like cosmic crime.
No, adikia seems to mean when one opposite, say the hot of summer goes too far, oversteps its natural bounds and encroaches on the territory of its opposite, like the cold of winter. It's an act of having too much. The Greeks called it pleonexia.
Okay, like summer getting too strong, lasting too long.
Exactly. And dike, then, is the necessary rebalancing. Summer has to recede. Winter has to have its turn. Day gives way to night. Night gives way to day. That's the cosmic justice.
And phonesis. Compensation.
That's the specific payment or penalty. Summer's dominance has to be paid for by an equal period of winter's dominance. It's automatic, reciprocal, not some god handing out sentences. It's built into the system.
Governed by necessity. Kata to kreon.
Yes, it's an unbreakable, inexorable process, not random.
And that last bit. According to the ordering of time, katatan to chronotaxin. What does that add?
This might be the most profound part. Time isn't just a container for events. It's an active principle. It orders things, taxis. Time itself is the judge, the arbiter that ensures the encroachment, adikia, is eventually balanced out by the compensation, categorizes. Time enforces the cosmic balance sheet.
That's a really powerful idea of time.
It is, and there's a very compelling interpretation here, widely accepted, that Anaximander is doing something quite clever. He's basically projecting the political ideals emerging in the Greek city-state, the polis, of his time onto the cosmos.
A polis. How so?
Well, the 6th century BCE was a time of moving away from tyrants and arbitrary rule towards more structured government, towards law. Anaximander's universe seems to mirror this. It's not ruled by one dominant element or god like a king. It's more like a constitutional state governed by isonomia, equal rights, or equal law for the opposing forces.
So the opposites are like political factions.
In a way, yeah. The war of opposites isn't total chaos, it's a regulated conflict. Each side gets its time, its share, but the law prevents any one side from completely taking over and destroying the others.
And the Apeiron is like the Constitution, the underlying law ensuring this balance.
Exactly. It's like the unwritten constitution of the universe, guaranteeing this isonomia, maintaining the overall order. And that order is cosmos. Anaximander was apparently the first to use the word cosmos, which originally meant good order, like in a city or an army, to describe the universe as a whole.
That's incredible, applying political order to the entire universe.
And there's another piece of testimony that fits here. It says, the Apeiron does embrace and govern all. Perisein apanta kai panta kai burnan.
Kai burnan, like a ship's pilot. To steer or govern.
Yes, it's the root of our word cybernetics.
Yeah.
It implies steering, guiding, controlling. But how does it govern?
Well, the fragment says the opposites pay compensation to one another, alloy.
That's the crucial part. It suggests the Apeiron isn't some external king or judge imposing rules from above. The law seems to be immanent. It's inherent in the relationships between the opposites. The system regulates itself.
So the governing, kai burnan, is just the natural tendency of the system to find equilibrium.
That seems to be it. The Apeiron's governance is this built-in principle of reciprocity and balance. Anaximander's huge insight was taking this idea of an impersonal, rational, inherent law from the emerging polis and applying it to nature itself, replacing divine whimsy with an intelligible cosmic order.
Okay, so putting it all together. The Apeiron is the origin, the genesis, and it's also the governing law, the dike. How do those two roles connect? Were they separate jobs?
That's the beauty of it. They're not separate jobs. The real power, the synthesis in Anaximander's concept, is that the governing and the originating are basically the same process. It's one unified principle doing both, which is how it fully realizes both meanings of archi.
How does that work? How can governing be originating?
Well, think about the fragment again. The Apeiron is the source from which things arise through that eternal motion and separation of opposites. That's the origin part.
Right.
But it's also the immanent law that ensures this whole process unfolds as a regulated cycle of justice and compensation, ordered by time. That's the governing part.
Okay. Still seeing them as two aspects, though.
Here's the link. The law isn't something applied after things are created. The law is the mechanism of creation and destruction.
Go on.
What is the injustice, the adikia that things commit? It's simply the act of coming into being in the first place. By separating off from the boundless Apeiron and becoming a specific limited thing like hot or wet or a particular world, you are, in a sense, usurping a place, taking on definition where there was none.
So existence itself is the injustice.
In a manner of speaking, yes. The act of becoming determinate. And the justice, dike, and the compensation, apeiron, is then the necessary flip side, perishing. Giving up that specific existence, dissolving back into the boundless Apeiron, which in turn allows its opposite the chance to emerge.
Ah, I see. So the cycle of birth and death is the enactment of the law.
Exactly. The Apeiron originates things by means of this inherent principle of reciprocal justice. The governing is the generating, and the generating is the governing. Origin, arche, and rule, arche, become identical in one dynamic, self-regulating cosmic process.
That is deeply interconnected.
It is. And it helps make sense of that other seemingly odd claim Anaximander made, that the Apeiron, the arche itself, has no arche.
Right. Aristotle mentions that argument. Everything either has an origin or is an origin. The boundless has no origin, because if it did, it would have a limit. It sounds a bit like a riddle.
It does, but it's not just a word game. It's a profound point about what it means to be an ultimate principle. For the Apeiron to truly be the ultimate source, it can't have a source itself. If something came before it, That would be the source, and the Apeiron would be limited by it.
Okay, that makes sense for origin. What about for rule?
Same logic.
Yeah.
For it to be the ultimate governing principle, the supreme law, it can't be subject to any higher law. It has to be, as someone called it, truly anarchic, literally, without a prior rule or ruler.
Anarchic?
This anarchy, this lack of a foundation outside itself, is precisely what allows it to be the absolute archa, the ungrounded ground of the cosmic order, the foundation of that cosmic isonomia.
So let's try and wrap this up then. This deep dive really changes the picture of Anaximander.
I hope so.
The Apeiron isn't just some vague, primitive stuff. It's this incredibly sophisticated, unified concept.
Yep.
The law of cosmic justice is the engine of cosmic generation. It's quite breathtaking, really.
It is. And his legacy really comes down to maybe two huge innovations.
What would you say those are?
Well, first, that amazing leap into abstraction we talked about. Moving beyond concrete things like water or air to posit this indeterminate, boundless principle as the ultimate reality. That's basically the birth of metaphysics.
Okay, the move to abstraction. And
Second, and maybe this is even more revolutionary for everything that followed, is extending the idea of law, impersonal, rational, necessary law, from the human city, the polis, to the entire universe.
right, envisioning a self-regulating cosmos.
Exactly. A universe not run by the whims of gods, but operating according to intelligible principles. That's the fundamental assumption underlying all of science and philosophy ever since. The belief that the world is an ordered cosmos that our minds can actually understand.
And you can really see the echoes of this Apeiron idea later on, can't you?
Oh, absolutely. You see traces in Pythagorean ideas of numerical harmony, in Heraclitus' logos that governs all, maybe even Plato's forms, the Stoic idea of a rational principle governing nature.
Even today.
You could argue that, yeah. Think about modern physics searching for a unified theory, trying to explain the origin and evolution of the universe from some singular, perhaps undefined, initial state. It feels like a very distant intellectual descendant of Anaximander's quest for the Apeiron.
It really was more than just a placeholder, wasn't it?
Far more. It was this bold declaration that reality, at its core, isn't just random chaos. It's unified, it's dynamic, and it's governed by a profound, inherent lawfulness.
So maybe the thought to leave everyone with is this. The Apeiron suggests we live in a cosmos that governs itself through a kind of inherent, unbreakable cosmic justice. What does it really mean for us to be part of that kind of reality?